situations men are faced with the difficult
Yeah.
men are faced with the difficult situations. But
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
when the feminists are faced with the same situations,
Yeah.
they say, these men are whining too much, be a man. So he's
Yeah.
wondering, why should the
Yeah.
feminists tell the men to be men when men are taking up space or complaining about something? Yet,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they also want to fight the men at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, Helena, it was good that I think it's a good, um, what you say, a good inquiry, inquisitiveness to know about that. I think there are a lot of negative narratives around feminism, and see in terms of when when um, women face difficulties or failures, then everyone would like to use that as an opportunity to silence their voice. Then we need to look at in terms of centuries of oppression. I mean, why do women would like to take that space? It's not in terms. I think what is important to recognize is that the space now is entirely occupied by men.
Mhm.
What feminism is talking is about, that is sharing equally that space. So it is not talking about putting the man away from that space, but
Okay.
to include him. But at the same time, how does he respect the space for the other persons? I think that's a critical one that I think we need to tell people. So therefore, when
Mm.
when the girls or women start accessing or exploring the space,
Mhm.
how does it come? I think that's where what we will be discussing today and tomorrow. What would come? But
Okay.
is it easy for women and girls to have that space? Certainly
Mhm.
not.
Mm.
And then, so therefore, I mean, whether not being aware or otherwise, the
Mhm.
process through which the men and boys have gone through
Mhm.
have been made to believe that this space is entirely theirs. And if
Mm.
they're a loving woman, it is only based, it's purely their own um, goodness, and
Mhm.
then there are, that's what we need to be challenging it. That's what
Okay.
they need to challenge themselves. I think that's where we need to look at how do we take forward this discussion in terms of, it's not easy because that's what I have been saying it earlier also in the input. See, power is
Mm.
always is a struggle.
Mhm.
And so people who are holding power, see, for example,
Mm.
men and women, there is no position there, but the very
Mm.
position, very fact that they are men, they are
Mm.
boys,
Mhm.
carry a certain privileges over the other sex.
Mm.
And that, whether you say it or not, when people assume it, and then
Mhm.
they practice that. So that's what we
Mm.
need to look at in terms of how does it come, because it's not that there is anything written, but it is what
Mm.
people imbibe. See, like values,
Okay.
no, they imbibe
Mm.
this that is where the patriarchy comes into effect. Wherever across the globe, we may be different in terms of different, we may have different cultures, different
Mhm.
context, but
Mhm.
at the root of it, the
Mm.
patriarchy still holds wherever
Mm.
we are there. And then
Yeah.
men and boys are victims of that. Like men,
Mhm.
boys, women and girls, the men and
Mhm.
boys are also victims there. So
Mm.
how do we help both of
Uh-huh.
them to recognize that is,
Mm. Mm.
it is not the written, it is what is being transferred
Mm.
through the power relations.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Helena. That was very wonderful question. I think we must appreciate your son for having raised it. I think
Mhm.
that's where you need to go back and then also tell him in terms of what we discussed about this and what.
Actually,
Yeah,
he's listening to the answer and he's clapping. He's saying thank you for appreciating him.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Let's begin our discussion today. as was said, we are going to discuss about what are the scope and prospects of challenging male domination. And we have with us Dima Godfrey from South Sudan. He was very active in our last cohort 2. And I thought it is useful if you all will listen to him, because one is we finished the second cohort 2 in the last month, and he has been very actively involved in the discussions we had in all the modules. But I particularly thought probably Dima would throw some light on the male domination, challenging male domination. So he would share his perspective, his views, probably in terms of what he originally has, and probably I think what as a result of the training that he had, if there are any insights that he drew and then applied to that, or even if it is not in practice, even if it is in the process of reflecting how those inputs or insights could be useful for his future work. So he will share with us for 15 minutes his views, his perspectives, and then that will be followed by discussion. Thank you very much, Dima, for joining us. Would you like to use PowerPoint, or would you like to just share like that?
Thank you so much. And thank you, colleagues, in the session. As rightly put, my name is Dima Godfrey Obol. I work for Lutheran World Federation, that is South Sudan program, as Protection and Social Cohesion Officer. And rightly put by Demos, I have been in cohort 2. Just to give you the picture, the cohort itself, the learning, it was so rich, it helped a lot, and hopefully you guys will also really learn a lot from it. However, I want to emphasize the importance of this discussion, because from the discussion you realize that you share rich experiences. So how I wish everyone will be very active in a group discussion, because it is where really you share practical experiences. And for purpose of clarity, I may not share anything with you in PowerPoint, but I will wish you to be very attentive and listen to me. I will focus much on my experience, my learnings, and also share with you actually my experiences and our approaches, so that at the end of the day, we are going to be helping ourselves to look at, like, is it helpful to work and reduce the male dominance? How will it help community? And to start with, I want to say, yes, where I work, I have worked in Uganda for quite a number of years, I think around 3 to 4 years. And now in South Sudan, at 2 years old, and all in protection sector. Coming to specifically male dominance, I think in both Uganda and South Sudan perspective, it is real. A male dominance in cultural setup, in a community setup, in organizational setup is a real. And it has everything to do with the attitudes, willingness of both men and women to join hand and understand that when we talk about women participation, when we are talking about gender inclusion, first of all, it is not war against men. Because in many meetings, many trainings, in many workshops, many radio talk shows that I attend and also listen or participate in, Many often at time people take, when you talk about women participation, women inclusion, women empowerment, people tend to take it like a war against men. That is one thing we need to make very clear. And the question is, as humanitarian actors, as development actors, how do we change this mindset of people? That remains a critical question for anybody working to remove male dominance in the societal setup. How do you work to make men to appreciate that, to understand when we talk about women participation, it is not about women, but it is about human rights. That from women participation, both men and the women will enjoy the fruit. Those are the fundamental development questions that I found myself asking about. Then the second thing is, how is the pattern of socialization in our community? I'm very happy when I joined this discussion, I had one of my colleagues, forgotten the name, had a very good question from the son. And the question was more about relating to, why are we talking about the women when even there are issues of boys? Just closely to that. And that is where we need to tailor now our training. The first thing is to appreciate that when we are talking about gender, it does not necessarily mean women and girls, but it means boys, men, women, and girls. But why are we overemphasizing women and girls? It is because when you look at a pattern in practice, the isolation, the exclusion, you will realize in all spheres of life, women are more isolated, more vulnerable than men and boys. This does not underscore the fact that there are isolated cases of male vulnerability. But the issue is now we are talking about fairness. Where is the problem? The problem is we need to bring women also at a fair level. And then thereafter, we sort these other isolated cases of men. And the issue also we need to look at is, how do we change the attitude of men to appreciate the fact that there is need for deliberate action to bring women up? First of all of us, let's reflect in our organizations. When you look at the management hierarchy, how many female do we have? And if you are in a position of responsibility, what are you doing deliberately to bring women in board? And for me, as a person, for me to do this, the first thing I did was to appreciate the fact that there was a long sidelining of women. Hence, if I put a competition, women may not comparatively compete well with the men on a merit basis. So what do? We do a deliberate action to make sure we give some affirmative action, a quota system, to encourage the number of women to come up into leadership, into organization. For example, if you are recruiting staff and you have that power, you are a manager, you are a male manager, and you have seen your requirement was for this qualification, and you are working in rural area. I want you also to take the fact that rural women suffer more than urban women. Even girls the same. So now when you go to rural area, you go for a deliberate action to reduce the qualification requirement deliberately and accept the cost of on-job training for a girl, a woman, deliberately. So that you make the woman to enhance her capability to do what he or she may think she cannot do. I have been into meetings, in trainings where even when the women are electing leadership, even themselves, when they say this one should be a chairperson, they will say, no, 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 no. At least chairperson, let it not be a woman, let it be a man. They will in themselves. But as a gender-focused person, I always do my best to make sure deliberately I give supportive facilitation for women to believe in themselves and come in board. Then the other option that I always do is when we are doing training, when we are doing radio talk shows, and we are talking about women inclusion or gender-based violence or women empowerment, we make sure there is a deliberate involvement of men. Deliberately. There must be male role models that we bring in board so that the men do not understand the discussion as grouping to fight or take their own space. But they understand the discussion as a discussion that will enable women to have power over themselves and enjoy the human beings enjoy. For me, in my experience, I learned involvement of men in gender empowerment is very important. For example, in South Sudan, we have what we call Women Justice Network. We deliberately established Women Justice Network. But when we were forming this group, we did the research to find out where is the problem of gender inequality. We realized the problem of gender inequality originates from society, the socialization element. And we look at like who are the key structures, who are the key stakeholders in this socialization process. When we got the finding, we realized the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, the chiefs, the local chiefs, they were very key in shaping the way society believe and decide. So we're like, no, if this is the case, why don't we involve and make this structure, since society believe in them, to be part of this Women Justice Network. And when we implemented this, we have really realized a progressive changes in behaviors and acceptance of a community. That for sure, we should have women in leadership. For sure, we should have women in a job. I can tell you for free right now, like in one of our Payam, the head chief is a woman. This was after our intervention. It has never been there in that county that a woman is a head chief. But slowly, many realized it was very important to give space. And they were acknowledging that the advice of this woman was wonderful and exceptional. So that means we need to deal with the root causes. The root causes of patriarchy. What is bringing about male dominance? It's a biggest issue in South Sudan. And we learned that once you deal with the root, you will find it very easy to manage. But also, how do we get a generation? Because we need to think of sustainable approach. How do we get a generation that will move away from these issues of male dominance? For me, in my experience, what I realize is now investing in children right from birth. When a child is getting up, growing, how do you socialize this child? The way you socialize this child is the way the child mindset will be. For example, if we have a baby girl and a baby boy at the home, what kind of toys are you buying and distributing to these children? In a school setup, how do you distribute roles and responsibility for children in schools? That means as gender-centered organizations, as gender activists, We have to take focus in schools, institutions of learning, religious institutions, and cultural institutions to make sure that right from socialization, children appreciate that both boys and girls are equal beings and they have to enjoy the same rights. And we should make everybody to understand, I emphasize this very important. Talking about women empowerment or male dominance is not about taking power away from men. What I realized also from my career of work is sometimes there is error from humanitarian actors. The way we bring this message to the community. I remember at one point I attended some talk show by some partners. The talk show ran from passing message to competition. Men were calling to defend themselves. And unfortunately, women have less access to phone. So at the end of the talk show, men dominated the discussion and they look at it like a competition. So when we are going to do awareness raising, when we are going to do workshops, our tones, our messages will not go blaming men. Because when we go to the game of blaming, even the stakeholders, they will never create space to listen to our message. First of all, they will block their mind. And once they block their mind, it is worse with the cultural institution. They will label you as an organization that is encouraging indiscipline in community. We need to technically and strategically approach these stakeholders, appreciate their roles in the community, and make them understand how important women inclusion will shape the community, political, social, economical. You can even break down how much money we are losing as a country, as a community, how much money they are losing if women's rights are not respected, if women are not involved. For me, in most of my trainings, I do social research. I get how much is government spending in addressing domestic violence? How much is government spending in addressing the maternal or child mortality? And how can involvement of women or reducing male dominance reduce this burden on the tax, on the government tax? And how can this tax be reverted to make community better? So when many realize their participation in causing this burden, they will obviously begin to create space for women. And I think that is what I will emphasize, that we should take serious as humanitarian workers. Of course, in the due courses of duty, you will get a lot of barriers. You may get a huge barriers. One is in South Sudan in particular. We are absolutely a patriarchal society. The leadership is male dominant from up to down. Whereas there is around 35% that the government document, government policy emphasize to be given to women. Many men still believe it is a favor. And even if they have given this 35%, the 35% is more symbolic. The women do not have that executive power of decision influence. So our approach is to again penetrate the government system and have deliberate discussion with the government to see into it that they appreciate, we don't force them. We explain and make them appreciate that engagement of women is not a favor, but a call for government to create a level ground that every child believe in himself. I remember recently we demonstrated, we did some activity together with the Plan International in South Sudan during the World Children's Day. We requested the Honorable Commissioner of Magui County to give a space for a child to act as a commissioner for the whole of the day. And we requested this child to come up with a policy statement, the changes he will wish. You will not believe when this child came up with recommendation, everybody was excited. And the commissioner was the first person to say, if I have a job, I will be the first person to give you. I think girls need to be taken seriously. So sometimes we have to create a deliberate space to include girls and boys to demonstrate their capacity. Once we create a space, people realize, yes. I have been called one time by some leaders, they said, now this women head chief is less corrupt. I think we need more women in leadership. So when we create a space for women to demonstrate their power, it will obviously attract community to accept changes. That means we need to speak and have action. Because if you don't have action also as an organization, you will be challenged. You will go to talk about women empowerment, gender inclusion. They will say, but you are here 5, only 1 woman. What are you talking about? So as organization, as humanitarian actors, as development actors, we must do deliberate action. I emphasize this, deliberately, to increase women in every sphere of life. And then sometimes, the last but not least is, let us have a meeting or a workshop that is for only male. You know, I learned from a colleague in this cohort, the second cohort, and I tried to do it myself. Then I realized when men are challenged by fellow men, you know, a role model give example on how his family is progressing because of including women. Then the rest will pick from a role model. But when they are mingled with the women, sometimes they tend to be very defensive. So I think the idea of going forward with the male workshops, boys workshop, girls workshop, women workshop should be encouraged such that there is a level ground for every category of people to share their experiences, their learnings, and opportunities in their lifetimes.
Thank you, Dima. That was wonderful. You have given a very comprehensive perspective from your experience in Uganda and South Sudan. I was very particularly inspired by the way you have located it within the human rights and fairness, which is a social justice matter. And you also touched upon in terms of how do we know to look at, challenge the existing one. I think the socialization, I think many of our colleagues also has accepted your proposal. I think we need to look at how do we break this, how do we break this notion of superiority and inferiority. And you rightly said in terms how do we create spaces, and I looked at in terms of right from the we as change agents, and even in terms of government, how do we all work together to make a change that we are looking for equality of all men, women, boys and girls. Thank you very much, Dima, for that wonderful input. And we would now ask people to share what Dima has said, so that Dima would be here for a few minutes in terms of he would respond. Dima can continue as long as you want. And Achayo, you have a, and then Mary. Achayo, you wanted to say you have a comment to make? Achayo, Diana?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can you please share your comment?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity you have granted. Actually, I'm so much happy and impressed of what Dima really shared on how issues of gender inequality is right from the family level. I can attest to this with the experience that I've also had.
Yeah.
I personally work together with Dima, and he's my supervisor.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
So, yes. So at the family level, given the family setting where I've come from,
Yeah.
I've seen that it's really the effort that needs to be geared by parents in shaping how gender is perceived right at the family level.
Yeah.
Because most time the socialization level of how parents introduce their children to is what brings about this gender inequality. I can attest that I'm the only girl born in the family to my father and mother.
Okay.
I have 6 brothers.
Okay.
But what my parents did is that they did not show to me that I am inferior, I cannot go to school. But they provided that platform of where we can hold family meetings together with my brothers and them as parents, and we share on our experiences of what we face at school. And that platform really helped me a lot to gain that self-esteem, whereby even the schools I've attended have been able to lead in the leadership positions, being a head girl, being a sport prefect. And this has helped in grooming me up to where I am today. Even I think my supervisor can attest that I am vibrant and very eloquent. I can speak out my mind. And this is how the family is very vital in playing the role of shaping gender equality.
Yeah. So our regards to your parents, Achayo. I think that's the foundation that we need to look at. How does the family lays that foundation where the girls can assess and access that space for them to speak out. Achayo, are you also from South Sudan?
Yes, I'm from South Sudan.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. For that additional comments to Dimo's presentation, and then you have confirmed what Dimo was saying. Thank you very much, Achayo. Mary?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I really have enjoyed that discussion. It's very much like what I go through in Kenya. I've just come actually from training for 150 women, another cohort again.
Okay.
And I totally, first of all, want to agree with what Dima has said, that giving women rights does not mean that you are snatching the rights from men.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are only creating a more balanced world.
Yeah.
And I also want to say this, that for me, I think when it comes to change of attitude, and I really want to focus on women even more than men.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, men are already like, they are really enjoying their superior position. You know, it is like colonization was. People who colonized us were enjoying the superior position. Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody was just going to hand over independence to you. For me, I take it the same. That there is no way we are going to achieve gender equality if women still remain under the said stereotypes, under the socialization, under what people are really like. When women themselves hate themselves, when women believe that they are inferior, nobody is going to make them equal. And we must change. Dima has said it so well that sometimes you go to a place and you say, we are choosing this one chairman. And the women will say, no, we want a man to be chairman because a woman cannot. A woman cannot. The other day we had elections in Busia and women were saying, you know, no, Busia, we cannot have a woman governor. We have not yet reached there. You know, we want a man. We have not yet reached there. So until we change the women's attitude, until we change the women's self-image, self-esteem, then we are not going to achieve much. When women agree to the status quo, that they are inferior, that they should be beaten, that yesterday again, I had a training and I asked women about physical violence. And the women who said they have never been beaten, they were about 4 out of 150. The other women told them, you are still very new in marriage. It is coming. You know, beating is coming. So they are expected to wait. So until we change, until the woman herself changes, until the woman herself changes. If you come where I live, in Busia County, and maybe we have a meeting. Yesterday we had a meeting on human trafficking and I was invited by the county commissioner. And everybody came and they were all saying, you know, the police came and they were saying how hard working they are doing and how much they have really stopped trafficking. The chiefs came and they said how well they have worked. And I came in to speak for the civil society. And I said, you know, we should not cheat. This is the situation. This is what, and I gave examples. And finally they were all saying, yeah, Mary speaks the truth, but I'm a woman. And I could not just keep quiet because the police commandant has said this, I'm so scared. Because the chief has said this, I'm so scared. And by the time we were leaving, it is what I had said that was being now taken. And the projects that we were launching yesterday will go by what I had said, because I said the truth. I said what we have experienced. So women need to change. And I could see even yesterday we had senior women in that meeting. And whenever I could say that I had an experience of a chief who was keeping a brothel, running a brothel, and he was keeping 13-year-olds. People know that story, but you could see them looking at each other in a very frightened way, like a bomb will fall on me. No, women must change. The attitude of women must change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Very good. I think we need to look at in terms of the attitudes must change. I think the attitudes, again, we go back to socialization and then locating where the change must begin. Ruth?
Thank you.
Yeah.
My contribution is that I think there needs to be deliberate mentorship for young girls and young women. In that, if you know you are a woman leader in whatever space you are in, it can be in a political space, it can be in your work environment, so long as you are a woman leader, can you be deliberate on holding hands of younger women so that they walk that path? Because most of the time we have them and it is just about them. I've attended several meetings of women leaders and things like that. And it frustrates me that every time, every meeting, we keep on meeting the same people. So how are we growing? How are we making a difference? So that's deliberate mentorship in all spaces of leadership for women would create a difference. Because then the young women have where to directly learn from and be motivated from. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Where are you from, Ruth?
Kenya, Ruth
Kenya.
Manoti from Kenya.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think you gave in terms of how mentorship can help in bringing about equality and in particular in terms of challenging the male domination. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Prof, for the opportunity. My name is Elizabeth from Kenya. The presentation from Mr. Dima, it was very, very detailed and very informative. One point or one focus that I got is that according to my country, I think we should start it on in order to reduce the male dominance. We should start it from the grassroots. The way he explained it, we start it from the school level. Okay, yes, from family, then from school level. And according to me, we should focus on how to use our educational systems to engage both gender, both the male, the female, in promoting the gender inequality. And this should be in and out of the school. So I would, if I was to suggest, we should review our curriculums and encourage the reflection on gender norms and equality, so that we can create an equal space for both the male child and the female child in future. And also provide equal opportunities for the girl child, for the boy child, and that would create a lot of confidence for the leaders to come in future, not reflecting on or not focusing on whether I'm a male or a female, and that would be a better world to live in than what we are doing right now. That is what I felt.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think you were right in terms of how do we look at review the curriculum. I think the curriculum again is because I was recently researching for a video for our own session on the gender roles, and I was surprised to see those videos were actually reinforcing the stereotypical roles that we have been talking about. Because I think if that is the situation, because they are naturally going to reinforce, and the people who access them will be the carriers of that, those type of things. I think we need to look at in terms of does the communication, how does the curriculum reflect and carry the gender stereotypical roles and responsibilities. Very well said,
Sure.
Elizabeth. Then let's look at in terms of, I think, very good reflection. I think, Dimo, thank you very much. I think many people appreciate your input. Let's briefly, let me share the today's discussion, and then probably.
Maybe just the last one from me.
Yes.
Maybe before I go.
Yes, Dima. Go ahead.
I think we must also look at the economic element, economic empowerment of women.
Yeah.
Because the economic has implication. It has a result on how a woman realizes self-actualization. I have moved and seen humanitarian actors designing programs for women. But unfortunately, we also go to designing best paying careers for women. Even when we are helping girls out of school, we find we focus on hairdressing for women. We focus on maybe making mats for women. We focus on a small paying thing. Then when we are directing to the gender, the male gender, we are focusing in engineering, in a building, in a whatever. So I think we need to also focus on seeing, deliberately encouraging women to take well-paying jobs, even when we are designing programs. That in itself will automatically empower women to self-actualize and really enjoy and have power over herself and influence other women.
Thank you, Dema. That was also wonderful. I think we need to look at, I think it cuts across all spheres, and where there is nothing that we say that is out of reach. Everything is intertwined. I think we need to look at I think what Dima was saying, it goes back to the STEM focus of STEM, because you find why are women not employed in the white collar jobs or jobs which are related to technology, engineering and technology, because you need to go back to the stereotypes in terms of the way, what courses the women and girls can have access, and also in terms of institutions. I think that's one of the important element, Dima, which you said, institutions play a very significant role. Social institutions, educational institutions, governance institutions. And unfortunately, these are the institutions which also reflect which are the epitome of the inequalities and discrimination that exist. So therefore, how do we look at the role that the institutions play in perpetuating the inequality, and particular gender inequality is something that probably we need to look at in the various processes that the institutions adopt. Thank you, Dima, for raising that. And then let's look at in terms of, Dima, you can continue as long as you want. Let me share the screen so that in terms of what we must focus today, given the input from Dima, and then our own discussion. I'm looking more in terms of, oh, I did not. Let me share the screen. I think we listened to Divan in terms of looking at the challenging male domination. Let's spend the next few minutes to discuss more in terms of, I think he has highlighted some, as individuals, what are our own dilemmas as change agents? What barriers, what dilemmas do we have? How would we guard ourselves from reinforcing the patriarchy? And how do you create, I think as he was rightly saying, if you're a manager, how do you create the gender equal opportunities? So let's concentrate on this in terms of, as individuals being change agents, what barriers, what dilemmas do you have in challenging it? And I would like more the male members in the group to share their comments, and then move on in terms of, in our work, how do we guard ourselves that our work does not reinforce the patriarchal values and worsening the or promoting the dominance? And what if you are responsible for creating or challenging male domination, what do you take? What do you propose to take? Okay, I will stop the screen and then yes, Mary, you.
Hello?
Yeah, yes, Mary.
Dimo's last comment has just reminded me something that we did.
Yeah.
We had a project, and part of it was to train women, young women, like women who are victims of early marriage.
Yeah.
To train them in skills, because it's like maybe most of them said they don't want to go back to school, but they were willing to do skills. And so we gave them many alternatives, that dressmaking, mats, tailoring, mechanics, welding, and all that. So all the women went like for dressmaking, they went for making mats and and salon, making hair and all that. But this one particular woman, it's a young girl, very strong. She said she wanted to do mechanics. And she came to the office the next day badly beaten by her husband. And he was like, I can never marry a woman who is a mechanic. I can never marry a woman who will be coming back home with oil all over her body. I can never marry a woman who will be working in garages with men. She'll become a prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah, she ended up beating because of wanting to do a male-dominated job. And I went ahead. I told her to go and take a P3. By the way, this man he was arrested because he had really hurt her. Later on, he was forgiven. But the woman, as we are talking now, she owns her own garage.
Yeah. Oh, good. Very good. Very good. I think, you see, but Mary, you brought out very important one. I think we need to look at in terms of, see, we are talking about male domination because invariably it ends up with violence. When there is a questioning of male supremacy, the immediate thing that comes out is in terms of violence. I think gender-based violence. I think they all go together, and together with that is the rights violation that I think Timo was highlighting. It's a matter in terms of human rights and social justice. So we need to look at in terms of we are not talking about male domination isolation. We are talking about male domination in the context of gender inequality and discrimination, and how does it contribute to the issue of human rights and the social justice. Thank you, Mary, for that. I think let's look at it in terms of, we know in terms of there are good things, and then we need to move forward. But let's see in terms of within the group, I would particularly request the men colleagues to come up. What dilemmas do you have to take up this? Very honestly, because it's not in terms, we are not looking in terms of politically correct responses. Are there barriers as men to challenge? Because I think what Dima was saying in terms of, if we have workshops for men and boys, probably there is more scope for them to be reflecting and then probably be taking forward how they can be responsible. Are there anyone who feels? Let me first ask the men and then probably the women. Anyone? I don't see any names. I can't make out men from this. Dominic? Francisca? Any volunteers who would like to share their comments in terms of, are there, or we don't have any dilemmas? Is that correct? Because not taking action is also a violation. If you look at it in terms, it is not that you may not be contributing to violations, but if you are silent to violations, it is also a violation. Let us ask, yes, Mary.
Yeah, thank you. I think men are also in a dilemma. Men have dilemma because one, they have also been socialized to behave superior. And if a man does not behave superior, his colleagues and even women feel like he's weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks abnormal when he's not showing like that masculinity, that negative masculinity. You know, he's taken to be weak. He may lose friends. His own family expects him to behave superior. So, for example, if a man is seen maybe cooking in his house, his mother might really feel so sad. And I'm saying his mother might feel so sad for raising up such a weak son. You know, a mother who is a woman may feel so, At the same time, when a man goes out of his way to maybe talk so much about female issues, to talk so much about women's rights, he also risks even his fellow men, the friendship of his fellow men. He risks looking like, why are you supporting the women? So like in the political arena, if a man really supported a woman so much, you will even get the husband of that woman saying, maybe you are having a relationship with my wife. She could be your girlfriend. So for this man to be safe, he would rather either just keep quiet. But what I know is that whenever men show like they are not showing masculinity, they run a risk of losing so much in terms of family, in terms of their friends. People start looking at them like, you are so abnormal. Why are you doing this? What is wrong? When the man, like in Kenya, for example, in Busia, where we are, when a man does not beat his wife, they all say the woman has done magic to him. Yeah. So for him to prove that he's a man, he has to show a bit of force. He has to show a bit of negative masculinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I think Ruth, are you clear in terms of the question? The question was in terms of, we know in terms of it need to be challenged, but I was asking in terms of both men and women, what dilemmas, personal dilemmas you have to challenge male domination, whether in your own personal life or in the workplace that you with the communities or the organizations. Ruth, is that clear? Natalia was saying in terms of there are focused in fighting for equal rights. In Mozambique, gender issues are taken priority and all job vacancies. Not encourage women to apply, especially on STEM courses. Good, I think there are, in the organization I work, we have women as National Director, Human Resource. Thank you very much, Natalia, for sharing. I think good in terms of that in Mozambique, you were able to see women at the leadership position. Let's come back in terms of like what Mary was saying. Men may have their own dilemmas in terms of how does this be treated within the family and outside the family. Is this seen as weak? And then what humiliation that you will face? What other dilemmas? As women, do you have any dilemmas? Aiswini?
Hello, thank you for this opportunity. When we're talking about dilemmas that we as women and men face in this society, I personally feel that patriarchy as an institution and an ideology equally impacts both the genders and of course more so towards the women. But then when we're born, we are given two sets of gender roles which have gender stereotypes and prejudices attached to that, and we've been told that to exist in this society we are supposed to fit into those gender boxes. We cannot move away from those gender boxes. So from early childhood we are made to fit into those gender boxes, and as we grow up keeping that ideology, keeping that mindset in mind within those gender boxes. So when a man is in a position of power and has the authority to make change, oftentimes the environment that he's been brought up in and that he's grown up in impacts that, because he has learned to behave in a certain way. The societal conditioning has impacted that for him, that has made him how he is, and same for women. But of course, what here we are asking for is equal cerebral opportunity, and men need to see themselves as allies to women. It's not a competition. It's not that women want to be in a position of power and be like, oh, you're not doing this to me, I need it. What they're doing is that if you have the power to be in this position based on your on your qualifications, and people are not questioning you that how are you going to do it without having a family and all of these other things, why am I being questioned? And I also feel that men need to come to the forefront and become strong allies to women. Of course, I understand that it is not easy breaking free from the glass ceiling, but it is important that they come and showcase their support to women and their colleagues and their partners, because oftentimes people that these men know, they ridicule them, they humiliate them, and they joke about them being effeminate, having interests like women, or women having more power over them. So this at times tends to overwhelm the man, or they become scared and they sort of not use their voice enough. But it's important that I mean, I'm not saying that it's a generalization and that happens all the time, but there are men who stand up to all of this and they support women irrespective of whatever happens.
Yeah.
So I think in order for men to change that thought process, I think the change needs to start within. They need to consciously take an effort and say that, okay, I personally don't like this, and this needs to change. And they can do that with their own colleagues. If they see one of their other colleagues or friends not behaving in a certain way where they're being stereotypical about women and their attitudes, I think it's important that they call them out. They challenge them, because if they being silenced, or them choosing to keep mum about the whole issue, is them being complicit to the whole issue, which is not what we want. I think it's high time that they use their power, they use their voice to show solidarity. And I think these are some of the dilemmas I personally feel that are there in case of men, because in my experience personally, whenever I've tried to speak to a man about the idea of feminism or gender equality, gender empowerment, I have always been seen as somebody who hates men, who hates the idea of marriage, who thinks that men should not exist in the society. They do not understand that feminism is about equality. They see it as a women-centric issue, and they have been calling me names for that. So the idea is that they need to also have an open mind to accept that what is this entire issue all about? It is not a women-centric issue, it's a people-centric issue. So I think communication here is the key. We need to choose each and every platform that we have and use our voice to make and carry out the change. So I think this is my opinion, and thank you so much for hearing out.
Thank you, Aiswin. I think the core is in terms of how do we unlearn and relearn. I think we have learned something from our childhood. How do we see that is no more meaning for those type of learning? I think that in this process of unlearning and relearning, there is phases of insecurity. I think that's where I think we need to look at how does communication play a role to help men as well as women to overcome this process, so that they see the roles in the current context. Ruth, I think Ruth, Vivian.
And so thank you. About the dilemmas we face, I am suspecting my thought, but then let me just share it. Gender is not only about women, it is both sexes, both female and male. And then over years, we've been having a lot of capacity building and empowerment of the girl child and women. Somehow, the men and the boys are being left behind, for lack of a better word. No, it's a good thing that we are pushing ladies to be what they are. But now, where do we leave the men and boys? Because eventually now, a family unit is the basis of everything. We're having so many and too much empowered women. And then we are having weak men, for lack of a better word. So when these two meet, that is where you find issues of GBV increasing, because now the man cannot take it. They look at it as if they're being despised or something. So in this development world, I don't know how we are ever going to find that balance, because even currently, very many families break. In these recent times, very many families break, and it is most of the time because maybe that man feels intimidated, maybe they don't feel enough. But you see, that is their burden, because a woman is empowered. So we really need to find a shift. And one good shift will be, like, for example, for this course of ours, we are having men on board. It is not like it is women alone. So can we also be bringing them on board? Can we have a way of also working with them in this journey, so that at least there is a balance, so that they can understand us better and we can understand them better.
Thank you, Ruth. I think we need to, that's the mistake that we have done as development practitioners, excluding men in the process of development, in the disguise that we are more concerned about women in development. I think we need to look at into how do we bring both together. Nelly, and then we will come to Vivian Mary. Nelly?
Thank you. I think, sorry, I'm from Kenya.
Yeah.
And in my experience, is that with women, we need to prove ourselves more than men. In this way, my dilemma has been to prove that I can balance working outside the home and still have my wife and motherly roles. So I have a job that requires a lot of travel. And whenever I have to travel, I always have to have a discussion, especially with my parents, to tell them that this is going to go, I'm going to travel, I need your support here.
Yeah.
But always they mention how it's not wise to work from outside the home. And even studying, like now I'm in a process of studying abroad, and they keep on bringing it up at the same time. Like, so who will manage your home? Who will manage your children? So that's what I can say.
Yeah, thank you, Nelly. I think you need to make an extra effort to prove yourself or set positive climate so that you can make your shifts. I think that's very well said in terms of, it's not the case in men, but the woman need to establish herself that her absence will not create a problem before she moves on. Thank you, Nelly. Vivian?
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. And I would like to say that we have a lot of dilemmas for both men and women. For example, in a family setting, if a woman wants to create a balance in the house or in her house, the man might think like the woman wants to overpower him to take up like the responsibility of being the head of the house. So that you will find that these people end up quarreling all over because the man will not want to be dominated by a woman, or having been raised knowing that it's a man who is supposed to dominate. So this creates a lot of problems. And for example, in work environments whereby the organization or even that institution is dominated by men, when a woman would like to create a balance, the men in that organization who are dominating might think that maybe the man or the woman, I mean, wants again also to overrule or to overturn their positions. So they might end up also even losing their job because it's dominated by men, and this is a woman who is trying to create some balance. So she might also, she fears even losing her job because the men might not take it lightly, or they might not take it normally. So we have a lot of dilemmas, and it's us to ensure that the men are in the know-how, that we are trying to have this balance between the woman and the man, and it's not that we want to overpower. And even you might end up having being nicknamed or being given a lot of names, even when you are, for example, in a political setup. When a woman wants like or is fighting or is going for a certain seat, you might see men, even the fellow women, rebelling and calling her names, saying this one even is dominating his husband. That's why you see she's coming here. She also wants to dominate us. Let's not vote for her. So we have a lot of fears, and I think the institutions or the activists need also to put more efforts in ensuring that these men are also empowered as we are trying to empower the women, so that we have that balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Very good. Mary and Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Prof, I think you have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because listening to my colleagues,
yeah.
I'm seeing we are still under what we are trying to change.
Yeah.
I like what my sister from India has said.
Yeah.
We are saying we are fighting for women's right, and we normally use the word fighting.
Yeah.
And I will start by, I think it is Ruth who said, and then I will say what Demo has said. Demo has told us very clearly that women's rights does not mean that you are snatching rights from men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I also want to state this, that strengthening women does not mean that you are weakening men.
Exactly right.
You know, because we are, yes, strengthening women does not mean that you are weakening men. In the first place, the purpose why we are talking about women's rights, the reason why we are talking about gender equality, gender equity, gender balance is because the world is not balanced. You know, already there is a problem.
Yeah.
Already men are so empowered.
Yeah.
Already men are so superior.
Yeah.
So we are only trying to fight for improving our own self as women, for improving women. Those men who are supporting gender equality are only saying that women have been so low and we need to raise them up. Women need to raise them, to be raised up, to have, we normally say, to have a 50-50 world.
Yeah.
So when we are talking and we are like, you know, men will think that they are being dominated. Let me tell you, I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
I care for my space.
Yeah.
I care to be respected.
Yeah.
I care that my voice be heard.
Yeah.
I care that I be recognized.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want, like the moment my husband dies, the relatives come and take my things because I'm a woman, and I'm like, you know, if I report them, they will think. I don't care what they think. So in this space, we need to know that we are being trained here to be like the voices of women, to be like, yes, I normally talk to men. I normally tell them like, this is the law, this land belongs to the lady. But we are not going to stop because some men will think that we want to dominate them. I don't want to dominate anybody. Neither do I want anybody to dominate me. Thank you. Now, wait, my biggest dilemma when I talk to women, my biggest dilemma has been this, that I try to talk to women, but I'm talking to women who are so deeply oppressed by the socialization. And when you talk to women about their rights, about equality, sometimes it also means them coming against so many institutions, because the church is telling them they have to be low. Family is telling them they have to be low. So my biggest dilemma has been that sometimes when you talk to women about their rights, then it means them going against so many institutions which are very important to them. And it becomes very difficult. For example, a woman in Kenya cannot question what, especially in the rural, cannot question what the church is saying. A woman cannot question what her family is saying. So it becomes very difficult to talk about rights to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I think, Ruth, you were raising some question. Let me first hear to you.
Yeah,
Ruth?
I want to respond to Mary.
Yeah.
Yes. You see, the question was, what dilemmas are we facing? And you see, it is a dilemma. My point, whatever I shared, that we are getting empowered and women and the men are sleeping around, quote unquote, for lack of a better word. For sure, that is a gap that we have to look for how to bridge it as development people.
Yeah.
It is good that we are getting empowered, and I support that. I am pro-women empowerment. I'm pro-women empowerment.
Yeah.
And a loud one for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was about dilemmas.
Yeah.
For me, yes, it is a big dilemma.
Yeah.
You see, even if you look at circles, people who are saving a lot, it is women. You go to church and worship areas, it is women. And very many other investments, which is a good thing. That means the advocacy we've been doing for the many years is bearing fruit.
Yeah.
But what happens the other way?
Yeah.
Because that too can bite us. Yeah. And that is why I say we have increased numbers of GBV cases, for example.
Yeah.
Because the men end up feeling intimidated. I know you don't care, but then we need to care because it is women who will get affected by that.
Yeah.
We are having women intimidated in leadership positions because they are women, yet they have full capacities, properly educated with proper experiences and things like that. Better, some even better than men, but men end up getting that position because you see, they are men and the woman is sabotaged. Why? So for me, that is a dilemma and that is an issue that we need to be creative on how to bridge that gap in our development.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruth. I think that well said. I think, it's up. And how do we first recognize the void and how do we address that? I think it's a very critical point in terms of, despite the progress that we have made, it's widening at one level, and another level is in terms of how does it go round and round and again coming back to the women's. I think that's very well said, Ruth. Helena, and then I'll come to Elizabeth, Aiswini, and then Dima. Helena?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm in a place that is a bit noisy. Let me just adjust. My dilemma, I would like to share my dilemma and also just put in a little contribution on what Dimo said about empowering men through social institutions to be able to bring that balance and to be able to reach other men. Because when men are empowered, they're able to reach other men. And so they understand that it is not about taking their power, but about balancing the power so that it's a 50-50 thing. I really agree with Dimo on that. And when it comes to the dilemma, for me, I don't know about other people who are spiritual, but for me, it is a big dilemma because when one is spiritual, for whatever religion they are there to, the religions have doctrines. And if you see most of the religions, there's a way that women are socialized and there's a way men are socialized. And there are those stereotypes in the religion that will tell you a woman should be this and this, a man should be this and this. You find a lot of restrictions, especially to women. Some women have broken those barriers and moved forward with what they want to do. Some are not even, like I would say, for me, sometimes I hold back because you're told, a woman's voice is not supposed to be heard. And if a woman, like in the Bible, for Christians, they say if she has anything that she needs to say, then she should teach it to the men to be able to voice it for her. But you see, a lot of women have come over that, and we find women preachers. In Islam, I don't know about other religions, but because I've had experience in Christianity and Islam, I'll talk about them openly. In Islam, a woman's voice is not to be heard totally where men are. So as a Muslim woman, how do you break these barriers when your voice is not supposed to be heard? There, some women have broken barriers. You see them even in parliament, representing the women folk. You see the women representatives. But at the end of the day, the kind of wars they face out there, it is very difficult. Even as a woman in the family, like I would give you my experience, I was told a woman is not supposed to lead, a woman is not supposed to go to school, a woman is not supposed to leave the house, you know, a woman is not supposed to do a lot of things. But sometimes you're faced with that situation that you really have to do something. What do you do as a woman? Because when now you come forward and you want to really take up that space, the kind of opposition you meet is not good. You're even denied resources because now you're taking up space. You know. Yeah. So for me, the dilemma is about more on the religious stereotype. For someone who wants to lead a spiritual life, you face a lot of resistance as a woman.
Very well. I think the religion play is a very, very central part, because most of us have our own source of faith. And unfortunately, Helena, what we need to look at in terms of any religion, by its own spirit, does not believe in inequality. It doesn't discriminate between women and men. But often what is seen is in terms of how the scriptures which were written by men used religion to introduce and then perpetuate inequality. Because even in terms of, I know in terms of my Indian context, when some time ago I was believing in Manu Smriti, which was considered to be the law book, but even that law book, how does it treat the woman? So therefore, I think we have been using, that is where I think what we need to look at in terms of the church and the religion. There are two different ones. Religion is what religion preaches. The church would like to transfer it. So in that transfer, how original it is, or it is more an interpretation of the religion. So the institutions interpret the religion to their own convenience. And that's where we need to look at in terms more and more, how many people can really challenge that? That what the religion and interpretation are two different things. And we are now living in interpretative religion. And how do we bring back that? I think that's where every religion, I don't see any exception to that. We don't need to look at Islam as a separate one, but I think every religion is in that on their own way. You look at in terms of any of the religious ceremonies, what roles are given to men and women? Is that what religion talks about? Religion never talks about that the men and women are different. It talks about equality. It talks about non-discrimination.
Yeah, and so a question arises from there. If we are supposed to use institutions to bring out this balance in gender equality, gender equity, we are supposed to use institutions. For instance, now, how do you use a religious institution that has a lot of misinterpretations? To pass information to people.
I think that's where I think you were also saying in terms of there are already examples, because you always found only the male priests, but now you find some women priests are also coming. There are some women priests who are making challenge, but some of the church denominations are more open to gender equality. I think what it requires is in terms of a constant support. And how does this head priests become more and more aware? How do you make them allies? Because we cannot go out of religion. Not sure, because we are all bounded by religion. We cannot ignore the role of religion in our lives. But how do we overcome this in terms of how do we make the religions and religious institutions gender sensitive? And who does is something that probably we need to look at. That's where I think I was thinking in terms of who can do it. Nobody outside can do it. Somebody from inside, but unfortunately that some person will have to meet the challenges, will have to meet the consequences of that challenging.
Thank you.
Yes, Helena, Elizabeth, Aiswini, and Dima. Elizabeth?
Yeah, thank you, Prof. One of the dilemmas that I have as a female in this situation, maybe a female leader, like, will I even get the necessary support that I deserve as a leader in that position to deliver or to maximize my skills in that capacity or in that certain institution? For instance, the reason I'm saying this is I know of an institution, and in this case, a big university, where we had a professor that was assigned the duty of a vice chancellor. And then this was a lady, of course. So what used to happen, the lady was so much, qualified. She had all the qualities of a leader, and she could really deliver. But something happened drastically, because when she got that position, the husband could ferry that lady to the job. She didn't want the lady to get a driver from the university. So the husband could ferry the lady to the university and then even go to the office and sit there with the lady. So in that situation, you can imagine, how are you going to deliver? People who come to the office, lecturers inquiring something, you have some meeting, you want to deliver, you cannot even. And then it became so chaotic, such that some legalities, some disciplinary issues they were talked upon, and it became a very bad thing, because the lady could, maybe, if I was the one, so I'm in a dilemma. Am I going to choose my job? Am I going to choose my husband? Am I going to choose my marriage? So sometimes we get into very challenging situations and tricky situations. For instance, if you have a man who doesn't want to support you, or maybe I can say that is how some of the men have been reared and have been brought up. They will feel so much insecure that my woman is so much empowered that I cannot allow that, because maybe she's going to rule over me, and it's not going to be okay according to my culture. So that is one of my dilemmas.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think, I mean, how do you balance? Yes, I think is a dilemma, because which one do you choose? I think it's this comes more in terms of the woman. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that. Aiswini and then Dima. Aiswini.
Yeah, thank you. So I've had my friends give out some really excellent points. I want to talk about something extremely specific. I want to talk about maternity leave. So we now live in a modern society where child caring is seen as a joint duty or a joint responsibility in most cultures. But of course, even today, it's primarily seen as a woman's chore or a woman's responsibility to take after her child. So I want to talk about how if a woman decides to have a child or becomes pregnant, automatically people start questioning, how is she going to do her job? How is she going to turn in her responsibilities? Will she give her 100%? Or would she have some medical emergencies? And things so on and so forth. Nobody extends the same questioning to an expectant father. Like I said, pregnancy or motherhood is seen as an extremely woman-centric issue. It's not seen as a couple's thing. So I also realized that when a baby is born and a woman becomes a mother, she has the longer maternity leave. Of course, it's taken a long time to reach where we are today. But the man does not really have much in the name of maternity leave. Oftentimes, they don't really have one. But even if they do, it's pretty short in comparison to their partner. So I feel like the society that we live in, automatically, because of the conditioning that we've been used to since forever, they have seen motherhood or having a child as a women's responsibility. And there have been there have been changes. I'm not going to say that there haven't been, that more and more men are also advocating for the fact that if we are also becoming fathers, we also want to spend some time with our children. So they are becoming more vocal in their companies, in their workspaces, demanding that they be given maternity leave. I remember reading in an article somewhere that a man actually quit his job when the organization that he was a part of was not ready to extend their maternity, their paternity leave, sorry. And he said the choice was either to do that or miss out on my child's milestone. So I think till the time we have that milestone, we have this mindset that, motherhood or becoming a mother or taking care of a child is just a woman's chore or a woman's responsibility, we will not be able to progress truly. And oftentimes there's another scenario that pops up is when a man chooses to be a house husband. Again, I remember reading an article on the same thing, and this person said that I have been a house husband for the past 1 year and I decided this after my child was born. He said that people in my family actually ridiculed me for taking this decision. They were not able to understand that this was a joint decision that they took as a couple, where the woman had a more paying job and more chances of excelling in her profile than and he was absolutely all right with quitting his job and taking on another role maybe a few years later when the child would probably not need them as much as they did now. So I feel like if we are talking about change, if we're talking about progression, the internal circle that we have around us, the environment around in a professional and personal circles, it is also important to break free from that, because oftentimes when men try to break free from that vicious cycle, the society around him or the family and friends around him are not very supportive. And I think it's required that you have to let people make their own choices and not ridicule them for that. It's okay if you do not feel that it's a joint issue, like having a child is a joint issue, but it is important that you let the other person make the decision for themselves and not ridicule them for that. So I think this is my point of view, because we were discussing about so many other relevant issues, and I felt like this was something that I needed to raise here.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you for raising that. I think it's very, very valid one. I think how do we look at the joint futures? I think, unfortunately, I think one of the things, Ashwini, is in terms of pregnancy is also seen as a disadvantage in the case of women. So therefore, that if you want to recruit women, if you want to elevate women to higher position, this always comes in terms, how does it affect the work? I think that's where we need to overcome. Is something that we need. I think there is a lot of people who are in the chat which talked about how do we look at in terms of how do we our own belief in whichever is the head, whether it is Jesus, Muhammad, or Hindu, whoever it is, how does it actually is translated into action is something that probably we need to reflect on. Dima, Achayo, and Ruth, I think we need to close with that. Dima, Achayo, and Ruth was also raising, and then probably. Dima, please.
Thank you. In 2018, I was working in Uganda. We were doing child protection and psychosocial support. In the process, we were helping children in life skill and their rights. So when we were doing this intervention, time came, children became more aware of their rights. When they became more aware, they started demanding for their rights. And in the process, the parents look at them as threat. They started increasingly beating them. They labeled them being indisciplined because they could not separate a difference between right and indiscipline. So when we learned that, we had to deliberately reverse our intervention and say, how do we tailor our intervention to target parents? So when we discussed, we came up with an idea of seed deals. And the seed deals and kid deals was targeting directly male and female parents. Then in that process, the parents increasingly begin appreciating the rights of children. And little do we know, the environment became balanced. They appreciate the right of parents, and also children came to learn that right goes with responsibility. I am not sure if we are taking something there. Also, some time back, I received a call in one of my training, actually, when I was on the radio. A man called, was like, this is a very good thing to do. But is there any way men can be empowered to live with empowered women? So I think this goes back to my earlier communication, that there is need to be a deliberately tailored effort to see that men are brought in board, to learn that when we are talking about women inclusion, women rights, gender empowerment, we are not talking about competition. We are talking about morals of rights, ethical values that must be shared and respected at all costs. It's about life, not about favor. That is a contribution I want to add.
Thank you, Dema. Wonderful contribution that we need to look at. I think we need to be conscious of all these areas. I think about it, unfortunately, that's where I think in terms of when you are claiming right, is often seen as a revolution, as a rebellious act, because that's the history says. Because history, there are movements, there are revolts against or revolts to claim their place, claim their rights. So anyone who is becoming aware and then raising it is seen as that. I think that's something that we need to check. The second one is that's where I think we need to look at in terms of human rights. There are we need to be conscious not only about the rights, but also we need to look at in terms of the responsibilities. Thank you, Dima. Achayu, and then I think we may have to end with that. Achayu?
Yes, I do appreciate all the submissions my colleagues are giving, and it's really giving me a sense that we really have an end in mind of how it will be to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal, Agenda number 5. So I would love to add more little, as another colleague really hinted much on it, on the issues of religion. Last year, I managed to attend a training that was mainly targeting on family planning. Training was majorly incorporated on the aspect of social behavior change that adopted the component of partnership defined equality. Because when you look at the African countries, issues of family planning uptake is very low. And this was attributed majorly to the traditional cultural norms and values held and the religious beliefs as well. So we had this training, and in this training, we had the religious leaders brought on board. And in this process, we had a discussion on how family planning is a problem in our county as Magwi, or in our Payam as Magwi Payam. So there was this one leader who said, and he was a religious leader who said that I, as a pastor, I cannot use a condom with my wife because the Bible says that is wrong. But often as the discussion went on, this pastor had to understand that there is the importance of using condom. So as he understood, what came out is that, yes, he accepted that everything is changing. So even such doctrines has to change, because if it doesn't change, it will affect the growth of the family. And he testified that as a result of not using family planning methods, for example, condom, he had very many children that were given birth with no space, almost only 1 year space. And that has affected the children's nutrition level and also his own personal spending at home, even the health of the wife. And now this brings me to a point of saying that when we need to bring about gender equality, yes, the religious leaders play a big role in it. But however, it's a gradual process that we need to know. It's not a one-day thing. We need to build that support. And that is what the partnership defined quality talks of. To build support right at the community level. And by building that support, you need to define quality both at the community level and at the health level. And you get to understand what are those hindrances that are affecting women's access to healthcare. Because we find that to achieve equality, women's health are also very vital, and more especially the reproductive health of women. We find that most women wear out like machines because of giving birth one after the another. And this man that I should make a decision to go for family planning method, because what they have is that concept of patriarchy, that every decision should be made by man. And I want to thank my sister, it was Helena, that when we talk of these religious doctrines, they are not static. Almost many things are changing and they are continuing to change. As men, traditional leaders, things are changing. The norms, good ones, we hold them. For example, when we talk of the cultural norms of teaching our children, our traditions of dancing, those are not bad. But now when we come to the female genital mutilation, that is what affects the health of a person. And a right to health is a fundamental human right. So we need to look at the perspective of which of those norms of value are good and can be held and continued with by the community, and which are those that are bad that majorly affect the fundamental human rights. I think that's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Achaya. I think that's a wonderful contribution. I think with that, it's a good time to end. I think what you have said, we need to look at in terms of things are changing, times are changing, perspectives are changing. So therefore, the earlier meanings have no place in the new narrative, new context. So we need to look at in terms of, in that context, male domination has no meaning in the current context. We need to revise, we need to find new meanings to us. I think that's what we need to look at in terms of how do we challenge male domination, because it has no meaning. We need to look at how that the domination, violence, control is replaced by respect, equality, and wisdom. Thank you very much one and all. I think I'm really enjoying the discussion across the globe. Thank you very much, Dima, for your guest speech. I think it was wonderful and it has triggered discussion in the group very well. That served the purpose. Thank you once again for taking out time to come and then speak to our participants, and they really enjoyed. Thank you once again. Thank you one and all. See you tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye for today.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.